Hello and welcome to our call today. We're with Susan Moore of More Business, and Susan is a VA, and not only a VA, she runs a whole team of VAs. So Susan, tell us a little bit about yourself, and can you explain a little bit about what a VA actually is?
Thank you very much, Paula. Yes, I have been a virtual assistant for about 15 years now. Prior to that, I was an exec assistant within the financial services industry. And once broadband made it possible and a move to the country away from London, I decided to do exactly what I do for clients who are not big corporates. So having worked in a big corporate, I took away the experience as an exec assistant, which is sort of a PA plus for anybody who wonders what the term means. You tend to have your own budgets, your own projects, and be more involved within the business strategy around about what's going on, obviously prior to being a VA with corporates, and then latterly with my clients. My first client as a virtual assistant was a hedge fund manager that I had been working for. And the second was an airline that had also been a previous employer. So I was very fortunate in that I had two large clients to start off with, and I think that really helped psychologically. It quickly became apparent, I would say definitely within the first 6 months, that I would not be able to look after all of my clients alone, which was why I decided to build the business and bring on a team of virtual assistants.
Okay. So it sounds like there are two paths to becoming a VA. One is starting up on your own, and the other one is joining a team like yours. So it's an associate, you call them?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, associate VA. So can you tell me a little bit about the two paths and how they differ, and any pros and cons?
I think the biggest difference between being an associate VA and looking after your clients yourself is that once you decide to outsource to an associate, you need to be clear that there's a very good fit. It's not necessarily in terms of sector experience. I think honestly, it's generally a personality or a chemistry fit. And as an associate, you earn less because, of course, as the principal VA, you take a cut for your marketing and all of your associated admin costs, invoicing, etc. So you can expect to earn less, probably by about 25%. As an associate, but it is a very good way of dipping your toe in the water to see if being a VA is for you.
And of course, you don't have to drum up the work, it's given to you.
Absolutely, yeah, because you can spend an awful lot of time networking and marketing your business. As a new business owner, it is quite time consuming, and you have to be consistent about it. So that takes up a very large part of what you're actually doing as a business owner. And I think as a VA, the biggest shift is the psychological shift from being a member of a support team and having all of the cushion behind you that entails, to becoming a business owner and changing your psychology is the big switch, where you know it's basically all down to you, which is fantastic because you can choose who you work with, you can choose how you work and when you work, although you will work harder than you've ever done in corporate. But the downside is all the decisions rest with you. So it's much broader than just switching on your PC for a few hours every day, doing a bit of work and then going off to do other things.
So it sounds like an associate is almost a halfway house, in that you will have that team, you'll be told what to do effectively, you have the work given to you. But in a way, you still have a little bit of freedom to structure what you're doing.
Absolutely, an associate is a very good way to start, and I think what I'm really very keen to get across to people who are interested in becoming virtual assistants is that it's not for everybody. It is an awful lot of hard work, and as an associate, you can just work out whether it really fits with your life, what other responsibilities you've got, without going the whole hog and spending time and money on setting up a business yourself.
Yeah, because setting up a business, as you say, it does take time, it does take money, it does take energy. If you were going to go it alone, what are the basics that you need to have in place? I'm guessing website, some business cards.
Absolutely. I think if you are going to go it alone, it's very much the attitude of it's a proper business and it runs as a proper business right from the beginning. So if you don't cut corners at the beginning, you're not going to try and make up for lost time later on. So you need insurances in place, professional indemnity insurance, public liability if you're ever likely to go on site with a client or rather they with you. You need decent contracts in place. Always worth doing. I know that there are people who work without them, but at some point something will happen where you will need them, whether it's a year down the line or 10. So again, it's great to get those contracts in place. A business bank account is a good idea because it helps with your accounting, as is a tool for keeping track of your business finances. Some form of software is fantastic because it really saves time and it makes it easier at the end of a tax year for you to be able to present all of your figures to an accountant, or if you want to do it yourself, obviously, to do your own tax return. And then in terms of marketing, a website is a must. It doesn't have to be enormous. It can be 4 pages long with a basic information on what you do, what your specialisms are, what your niche might be, who you want to work for specifically, and a good LinkedIn profile as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because 10 years ago websites were the marketing tool, but nowadays it's LinkedIn, and websites are more just to prove that you are who you say you are, and almost like a CV, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's what we do. If we look at anybody, the first thing we do is to Google and have a look at somebody's LinkedIn page and their website. And by all means, if you're setting up a website and it's underway, then use your LinkedIn page to have the information all in one place. But I would say as well, don't leave your web page sitting there for too long as being built. It does need to be up there pretty swiftly.
Yeah, and I guess as a VA, you have to walk your talk. You have to look professional, and so you put some time and thought into this. Yeah,
absolutely, you do. I mean, that's the whole thing with somebody hiring a VA. The reason that they do it is firstly because they are overwhelmed with what they've got to do. They're probably stuck doing their admin and all of their back office work, when actually what they should be doing is growing their business, sales calls, and actually the technical work that they're good at, rather than spending time on diary management or on social media posts, which someone can do for you while you're doing what you're supposed to do.
So let's talk about a day in the life of a VA. What might it look like? What might you be doing?
I think there are 2 parts to really what I would say in terms of types of VA, and one is what I would call the traditional PA role, which is as the first point of contact for stakeholders, for clients. So you're kind of the pivot person really or the point person on what's going on with your client's business. It might be that you take calls. I have to say, not very often. Most people don't use phone in the first instance, but it is being the first point of contact. It's a lot of diary management, event management, travel, online research, and then there's also the more specialised tasks such as email marketing, social media posts, and I kind of make a distinction there because obviously you have social media strategists and specialists, and I think you have to be very clear about what you do in terms of socials, because it might be that you also work with other members of your client's team, like a marketing agency, like a PR agency, accountants, that kind of thing. So it's just to be very clear on the socials what you're doing.
They might come up with the ideas, and the strategy, and it's your job to go and post them and perhaps feel, look at comments and so on.
Absolutely, to implement them, that kind of thing. And also just to be really clear professionally about how it all works as well, because you're privy, as a VA, you're privy to a lot of information. So you are very much a trusted person in someone's business. You've got the whole view of what's going on behind the scenes. So in terms of professionalism, if you have been a PA or an EA, you will understand the need for confidentiality, that you are sometimes handling commercially sensitive information. And it is very important to present the face of the client and to be professional at all times. And it's very, very important to your client that you represent their business in the same way. And to that, I would say as well, one of the bigger things is to understand your client's culture, because people work differently. And when you're working remotely, it's a little bit more difficult to understand the culture of the business. That's what you've really got to get your head around, as well as obviously the different working styles that people have.
Yeah. So, I mean, is being a VA a 9 to 5 job? I mean, you talked about perhaps fielding emails and calls. I mean, is it very much 5 or 6 o'clock? Switch it off, not going to work, or are you expected to sort of do these things as and when they happen?
No, I think I'm very clear with my clients, and it's actually written into my contract that I'm available between 9 and 5 working hours. Now, what I'm used to as a PA or an EA is the fact that it's not always possible. If I worked for the airline for several years, those guys were on an airstrip somewhere in the middle of nowhere, I don't know, miles away from any decent communications, that they could only communicate with you when it was possible. And if something went wrong, you can't wait 8 hours for somebody to help you out. So it's basically, I wrote those hours into my contract so that if I had a habitual emailer, I did have one actually, Saturdays and Sunday mornings at 6:30 a.m., which really disturbed my weekend, because then you start thinking about it. That's the only person I've ever spoken to and said, really sorry, but I only really look at my emails between 9 and 5. To answer your question, Paula, if you want to do work at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. rather, then you can, but it's the expectation that you're managing for your clients. So it isn't really a 9 to 5 job in terms of running the business, because you've still got to do your invoicing, you've still got to look at your contracts, you might do a bit of prep work, but that's your choice of when you do it. But as regards client work, then yes, very much 9 till 5, unless you've agreed something with your client.
Okay. So we've talked about the 2 paths, going it alone and going with an agency as an associate. Can you do the 2 at the same time?
Yes, you can actually. I know several of the VAs who are my associates are associates for other organisations. And I think that is because that's a lifestyle choice. They don't want to spend that time marketing, going out networking, and doing all of the invoicing and associated admin. So because of what stage they're at, maybe they've got young children, maybe they've got sort of chronic medical conditions, it means that they don't have the responsibility of doing all those other things as a business owner. So yeah, you certainly can work as an associate and have maybe 1 or 2 of your own clients, or completely as an associate.
Yeah.
And one very important point that I do really, really recommend to people who are thinking of becoming VAs is, if you are in an employed role, if you already have a job, but it's something that you would like to move towards, I would strongly suggest becoming an associate at first, beginning to build your clients while you still have a job, so that you don't suffer financially, because obviously there's a gap between ending your employment and building your business to such a point that you've got a standard of living that you want. Generally, it's below what you would expect to be paid as an employee, because certainly in the early days, you don't work 35 hours a week. So therefore, there's a dip in your salary.
So let's talk about money. How much per hour? I guess it's per hour, is it, that you can
Yeah,
expect to be
mainly.
paid as a VA?
I would say the industry average ranges from £25 an hour at the lowest, but I would generally, I'd say sort of in the 30 to 40 mark per hour, but rising to about £50 an hour for specialist tasks and work. Whatever's included in that, it depends what your specialism is. And it's really good as well if you can get away from the hourly rate, just because it kind of stops people from hanging on that. How many hours have you done? How long have you spent on this? I have to say that's incredibly rare. Generally, by the time people decide to take on a VA, they trust them and they know that they're going to do their best work. But if you can work on a retainer and offer packages that are paid up front, then so much better.
Yeah, that's good business advice. Yeah, getting away from the hourly rate, definitely. So you mentioned before about, for helping you in your business, it's good to have a software package that you get using and so on. Is there any type of software? So if you go to an agency as an associate, is there anything that they want to see that you have, ability in?
I would generally say that you should be familiar with Microsoft Office and all of the suite of software that goes with that, because that is what the vast majority of people use. Some people use Macs. Thankfully, years on, there's very little problem with the interface between Mac and PC, so that tends not to be an issue anymore. In terms of document sharing, I would say it's probably about 50-50 between Dropbox and Google Docs, just depending on the client's preference. And other than that, it's good to just familiarize yourself with various pieces of software. I mean, it's really important, I think, to take time out and teach yourself or to update yourself on software packages as well. Because you will be asked, and nothing is onerous. I'm not at all technically minded, but I just make sure from time to time that I'll go in and look at changes on something like Eventbrite, for example, who've changed a lot of their interface recently. And in terms of accounting or rather bookkeeping packages, it's good to familiarise yourself with one for your own business. They are pretty much identical, whichever you choose or whichever your clients use. So don't be put off by the fact that your client might use a different system to the one that you're used to.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would suggest as well is having some kind of software that manages your time so that you can easily record how much time you spent on a client's work, obviously for your billing purposes.
Yeah, because there is the danger that, you put more time in than they're going to pay you, or they ask for a bit cheeky and ask for more work than they intend to pay you for.
That's a classic VA issue. Is I don't know anybody who at some point has not charged actually for the time that they've done. And obviously, when you're first setting up with a client, we give a couple of hours a setup time which is not charged. Just to familiarise ourselves with their systems and where everything is. But be very aware of the value that you're adding. So rather than getting hung up on how much it's costing your client, think that if your client's got you working a day a week, during that extra day per week that they've now got, they've won a new client, and you've more than paid for yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things you talked about is getting away from the hourly rate, but the other thing is actually knowing your value and also having boundaries, whether that's around, the hours that you work or, deciding when I've done a little bit extra on this account now, but now I'm going back to the client and saying, we need to renegotiate our contract and so on.
Yeah. Or simply just to say, you took 25 hours for this month. I'm now on 23. Would you like me to continue with what I'm doing, or shall we pause it and start again next next week when the new month begins.
Yeah.
That's the thing, I think, with working remotely, which I think so many people will do post-COVID. Obviously we were ahead of the curve, we've done that for years. Is to make sure that communication is priority. So we always ask, when we're setting up a contract, that we speak to our clients on a weekly basis. And it might only be 10 minutes, but it's worthwhile, because within those 10 minutes, you can ask a question that's supplementary to what you're doing. You can check in on where you are with a piece of work. And it gives your client the opportunity just to update you on something that may have happened that week that will affect what you're doing, and also help you to reprioritize. So it's I think really, really important. Communication is key. And especially when something goes wrong, even if it's a one-liner, tell your client where you are and when you'll be back, because as I say, it's all about managing expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember from, my PR days when I had clients, even if you were busy working away and there was no need to be in touch, it is always good just to reach out, so they know that you're there and you're working. And
absolutely. Yeah, and if I get a phone call and I'm already on a conference call, or I've got my head in someone else's work, clients understand that fact. They appreciate the fact that when I don't actually say I'm doing someone else's work, I'll call you later, but it's, I'm on a call at the moment, I'll be back to you in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just crucial to let people know, so that they understand where you are with something. And it helps to keep your boundaries clear.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier on that one of your very first clients was an ex-employer, and again your second client was another ex-employer. So it sounds like if you are, going it alone, that's a good place to start. People that you know.
Definitely. I think networking has got sort of all sorts of connotations, and I think rather than that thought that you are going to do a hard sell on somebody, which doesn't come easily either to somebody who's been in a support role particularly, is that all you're really doing is broadening your networks, getting back in touch with people, so refreshing your networks and telling them about what you're doing. It's a conversation that you and I could have, and it's literally just a conversation. This month I've been doing this, Paula, how about you? What's happening in your business? And it's about being genuinely interested. Everybody's not going to be your client, but it's about who they know. And I think the beauty of being back in touch with people you've worked with in the past is they know you, they know your working style. So if somebody comes up who's looking for a VA or who's overwhelmed and needs a bit of support, they know the other person, they know you, and they understand if it's going to be a decent fit. Also, it's not necessarily that you're looking for people when you're refreshing your networks, of course. It's not about them becoming your client, but it might be about their expertise. You and I have both had businesses for many years. Business owners have the same sort of issues regardless of what they actually do. So it's also worth talking to other people who run a business and just asking them to have a coffee, virtual or otherwise, and asking them what top tips are, or how they deal with slow payments or difficult clients, or whatever that is. It's always worth it, because you can always learn.
And are there any organisations or groups for VAs in particular?
There are in the UK. I mean, there are country by country. There are organisations pretty much globally. In this country, there is a Society of Virtual Assistants who are very good, particularly on things like contracts and employment law. And kind of give you a very good steer in the right direction. There's also an organisation called Be My Assistant. I think they're at Be My Assistant, and they run a directory. I don't think anybody's ever, taken us on as clients purely on the basis of that directory. But again, it helps people, you've got social proof that you do what you say you do and that you are who you are. And they are very good, they're very good supporters of the industry, and they run the VA Awards on an annual basis, which I would absolutely encourage anyone to go into, particularly newcomers, anyone who's been in business for under 18 months, because I think VAs are a bit shy about putting themselves forward, and it's really great as a PR hook for your business.
Yeah, yeah. So Susan, as well as being a VA yourself and running a team of VAs, you also sort of mentor and occasionally have workshops, don't you, on becoming a VA? So do you mentor people from scratch, or is it more about growth?
It's both, actually. It's from scratch. I would say that it's for people who've already been a PA or an exec assistant or an administrator. So someone who's had experience in that role rather than coming to it new. I think if you haven't, then it's best to get that experience within the workplace, and then take that experience with you for your new business. I mentor people on a one-to-one basis and really help them to grow, either from very first setup, but some of the people I work with have been in business maybe a year, 18 months, and are looking to grow their business further. And that might be around about outsourcing to associates, or scaling their business and trying to work out where they go with it next.
Because there is a lot of potential, isn't there? You can outsource, you can build a team, you can create a brand.
Yeah, you can have an international team if you don't want to work across time zones. I mean, we've had quite a lot of clients who've moved overseas, so rather than lose them and they lose us, we have got a team who work across time zones in North America, Australia and mainland Europe as well. So it's sort of working out how you find those VAs, and generally, you know, how to support your clients that way as well. So it's great. And I think the beauty also of having a team of associates is, again, you've got a group of people you can talk to, bounce ideas back and forth with, and also just work out what best practice is and how to translate that into supporting your clients well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, that's been really, really helpful, Susan. And it's good to know, you know, there are alternatives out there. You know, for anybody that's been made redundant and they've been in an EA or PA role, that, you know, that there are paths there that they can take. So that's been really, really useful, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. Appreciate it.